Hey, if you look up Jem's Art Studio, they have this beautiful Ukrainian sunflower. It's absolutely worth checking out. All the profits are going to go to help Ukrainian charity, so please check it out. It'll be great. All the links will be below in the description and probably here in the picture. But yeah, go help them out. Ukrainians are going through hell right now.
This Organized Chaos video is brought to you by Jem's Art Studio. Jem's Art Studio is an online store that allows access to prints that you can use for most anything, obviously as just a picture, or as a wallpaper, or as a bookmark, or anything you can think of. You can find Jem's Art Studio at etsy.com/shop/Jem's Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello again. Today I decided to look at one of a content creator I kind of like, probably my favorite streamer, which isn't a high bar because I don't listen or watch streamers that often. Ironically, I almost never tune into his live stream. Just usually will watch a video of his, and I agree with him lots of the time. If you notice from the thumbnail and probably the title, I will be talking about Vaush. I thought it'd be fun for me to essentially go over an area where I don't agree with him, like, really much at all. And it's really when he talks about movies, because he released a Batman video, and I thought, maybe I'll share my thoughts on that one when I watch through that. Now, since then, he has come under a lot of fire, like a lot of fire. And before we get into what happened to start up this recent anti-Vaush campaign that's been going on recently, we need to talk about somebody. We need to talk about beloved children's author JK Rowling. I personally have read all the Harry Potter books. I was standing in line to pick them up. I picked up books 6 and 7 at the bookstore and read them all probably within a couple days of picking them up. I was a big fan of the series. I liked the first Fantastic Beasts movie. I thought the second one was shit. But I was a fan of hers. And then she came out essentially being incredibly anti-trans. And I'll go ahead and lay my cards on the table when it comes to the trans issue. And that I am a libertarian on this. And I don't mean a libertarian like a lot of people call themselves libertarian. I swear lots of people call themselves libertarian. They mean, just fucking conservative Republican. When I say libertarian, I mean I have the belief that you should live your life however you want to, as long as it doesn't harm the people around you or yourself. Period. If you wish to identify as a different gender than you were born as, I don't care. I think you should be allowed to do that. If it makes you happy, do it. I think it's that simple. I think people get outraged over this, and I truly do not understand why. It's just people living their lives. But anyways, JK Rowling has come out against the trans community. Let me see. I have right here. She has even come out and publicly fought against a bill to limit British people's ability to change their gender. Right now, I think to change their gender, they need like medical experts or something like that to clear it. And she publicly, and they were going to change it so that it was more optional. You could do what you want. And she publicly fought against that and won. So I honestly have no interest in supporting anything J.K. Rowling does. Period. That's my stance on J.K. Rowling at this point. I'm not buying any Harry Potter stuff. I'm not, on the podcast, I'm not going to be talking about the new Fantastic Beasts movie. I honestly think Johnny Depp dodged a bullet getting fired from that one, and he got paid full for, like, shooting one scene. Honestly, good job, man. Good job. But, yeah, she's an awful human being. So while Vaush is doing a live stream for Ukraine, fundraising for Ukraine, he sends a tweet. Let's see. Yeah, it's this guy. All JK Rowling had to do was shut the fuck up, and she could have been almost uncritically beloved for a century. And then he followed up with a second tweet. Women be quieter and start apologizing challenge, which is of course a take on International Women's Day. Now, if you want my opinion on this tweet, the first tweet just talked about JK Rowling, I think is 100% accurate. 100%. The second tweet is obviously just a joke on Women's Day. I find it a little cringy. I think it's obviously a take on International Women's Day. I'm a little troubled by the fact that his humor goes to misogyny very quickly. But it's a dumb joke. We all tell dumb jokes. He's a streamer. He puts himself out there a lot. So his dumb jokes are going to be out there for the world to see. Apparently his followers weren't the only ones that saw this. Because JK Rowling absolutely replied. And it was weird. Like, I don't capture it here, but she actually took a screenshot of his tweet and shared that. She didn't, share the actual tweet. And she just says, what you and your ilk fail to appreciate is how tediously familiar I find your tactics. I had a violent ex-husband who used to tell me life would be great if only I'd comply. But you're making the same mistake he did. Women like me can't be bullied out of resistance, which is really cringe. I don't even know what her point is. Essentially, she's saying he's trying to bully her, and it's a dumb joke. Here's the deal. Everybody's going on against Vaush for this dumb joke. And they're ignoring the fact that this is obviously something that Rowling is weaponized. What Vaush did was dumb. What Rowling did was calculated. I don't know what her end is. I don't know if her end is just to distract, have people fighting amongst themselves, maybe try to have people thinking less about her transgender shit before the new movie comes out next month. I don't know exactly what her tactic is, but she obviously has done this plan, and now everybody's attacking Vaush, and I would say I have mixed feelings, but I don't really. My only mixed feeling is that I feel the misogyny joke was a mistake, but she was clearly looking for it. He didn't tag her in the tweet. You can look at it right here. This isn't a tag. He just spelled out her name. It's not a tag. She has to search for this. And she found it, and she weaponized it, and now everybody's fighting amongst themselves, are you pro-Vaush or anti-Vaush? And it's like, Rowling is an evil person. Almost objectively, she is an evil person. And people just seem to be ignoring the fact that she's an evil person, jumping on that let's hate on Vaush bandwagon, which I think one thing Vaush could do to limit this is acknowledge that it was a dumb joke. Because right now he seems to be taking the stance that that joke was necessary because JK Rowling has it coming. I think he could acknowledge that it was dumb, and maybe he shouldn't have done it. Now, another thing people are saying that he should do is apologize. To which my response to that would be, go fuck yourself. No, he should not apologize to JK Rowling. She's an awful human being. She uses her power for awful means. Fuck apologizing for her. But everybody's attacking Vaush, and I actually got in a debate with someone about this. And eventually the debate broke down, and they told me the reason why they're attacking... I don't want to put up the tweet here, because I feel like I kind of had a semi-breakthrough moment. I don't want them to see this and be like, oh, it's all reversed. But eventually the debate broke down, and it came down to, we're going after Vaush because we feel he will listen. And we're not going after Rowling and her fans because they're all transphobes, and they won't listen. Which strikes me as insane. Essentially, it's saying we're going to choose the fight we can win instead of the fight that actually needs done. If Vaush decides to continue making misogynistic jokes, I will totally turn around on this and be like, okay, dude, stop it. But just right now, what we're seeing is a misogynistic joke that is being weaponized against him and effectively tearing people who should be allies apart. And it's very frustrating to see how quickly people are willing to go after other people simply for pointing out that Rowling clearly calculated this plan. To what ends, I'm not 100% sure, but she decided to weaponize this dumb joke of a tweet, and now everybody's tearing each other apart. It's very frustrating. And I just wish more people would realize what she's doing, because she is seriously bad news. So now that I've spent a decent amount of time more or less defending Vaush, I guess I'll go ahead and start criticizing him. Because that, like, when he posted this video, my thought was, oh, maybe I'll look over that, maybe poke a little fun at a streamer I like. And I wasn't expecting him to fall under all this controversy. I just want to give my 2 cents, because I've been in the Twitter discourse too. I've been a punching bag on Twitter the past few days for multiple things. So I'm getting kind of used to it, for what it's worth. But let's go ahead and check out and see what he says about the Batman. Because in general, I like his stuff, but his movie content, not so great.
Okay, I just got back home from watching The Batman, and the whole time I was driving back, I was talking with Kanye, going like, here's my take, till I realized that I was just like pre-running the bit where I talk about this on stream. Not streaming, because everyone leaves the stream or has to like cover their ears to avoid spoilers, so I'm just gonna talk, because the title of this, I think, is gonna be The Batman Was So Frustrating, which it really was, but I liked it. I liked it a lot, but it was very frustrating, and I'm going to spoil everything. So if you've watched it, or you don't care about not having watched it already, then go ahead. But yeah, okay. So just right off the bat, okay? Robert Pattinson makes a great Batman. I love the brooding emo energy that he brings to it. I love the fact that they just gave up on the idea that Batman can just miraculously dodge hundreds of bullets when he's fighting mobsters, and that they just made his armor completely unrealistically bulletproof. I'm glad they did that. It was very amusing.
Yeah. I mean, I think Keaton and Kilmer had that, but this was insanely bulletproof. Yeah, that's a good point.
It was very funny. I think it's based, I'm happy they did that. So, artistically, the movie, at least to me, was really, really nice. I really like the character they brought to Gotham, because historically, whenever I look at Gotham, I just feel like I'm looking at Detroit, like in the Dark Knight movie. It's just like, okay.
Chicago. Everybody gets that wrong. It was shot in Chicago. It looks like Chicago.
It's like a big city with skyscrapers, and there's poverty, It never felt like there was that much character to it, which was always a bit of a shame. Even The Joker, which was a really good movie, I don't know. There's something about it in this movie, the way they managed to nail what I consider to be like the fundamental essence of Gotham, which is that it's supposed to be.
So far, I'm agreeing with him. So yeah, I mean, I'm depending on you to give me some cringe, man. Come on, give me some cringe.
Very corrupt, obviously, and full of crime. But the corruption isn't like mobsters and criminals and corrupt officials feeding on a dead city. I always got the impression that Gotham was supposed to be an incredibly wealthy city, a very powerful city that was also really corrupt. And the corruption was the reason the money never made it from that industry.
I always actually got the feeling that Gotham was kind of a city on its last leg, kind of falling apart. That's why there's all the crime. There's people gonna pick it up and fix it up, but it's kind of just falling apart. These are just opinions, though.
Down to the people. How you have this incredible juxtaposition between wealth and poverty that I think this movie just nailed. And they comment on it a lot, too. That, I mean, the fact that Gotham Manor was at the top of like a penthouse apartment, it was just like a gothic apartment loft. I really, really like that. I love the locations. I love the fact that they, in addition to showcasing the dilapidation and the poverty, they also showed off like parts of Gotham that looked really well-to-do. I really liked that. I thought they did a great job with that. I got to take a breath. I just ran up here. Yeah. My my Spurg energy. Okay. So, if you're watching this, you've probably seen the movie, but in case you haven't, the basic gist of it is, the main villain is the Riddler. The basic gist of it is that the Riddler is targeting elements of corruption within the Gotham, city officials who work with the mob, that kind of stuff. And honestly, Batman doesn't do much throughout the movie. He even admits this in the movie. He says it's the Riddler's game now. It is. The Riddler's like, here's the next person I'm going to kill. Here's how you can stop me. And then they just post like the Impossible Game 3 Flash challenge or something. And Batman's trying to figure it out. And he figures it out just in time to be an accomplice to the Riddler's next murder, So the Riddler set the pace of the film. It was a very long film. It was like 3 hours long. It did feel long too, unfortunately. Could have felt worse, but it did feel long.
Okay, I'm used to really not liking his media analysis. So far, he hasn't said anything wrong. It's a little meandering, but I don't know. When you're doing free flow thought, it gets a little meandering. You might have noticed if you watch me, it can get a little meandering. Of course, I edit a hell of a lot more than he does. So maybe you haven't noticed so much with me, but lots of pauses with me.
It always felt like the climax had happened, or at least was about to happen, and then like Batman turns to Gordon, and he's like, he's planning something. And I kept thinking, he already has. He's planned like 6 things already. He's planning another thing. Okay, I guess he's the Riddler,
Mm-hmm.
My main issues with the film are, well, there are a lot of political issues. I know, what a shock. That I have with the film. Oh, sorry, don't mind my dirty dishes, and also the fact that I left my lizard's light on. I swear to God that she's not dying in the burning heat of the sun. Just the camera's light chip isn't calibrated to handle that level of luminosity. She's actually quite happy in the heat, because that's what lizards are like.
Yeah, I do think the lizard analysis really adds to the... Okay, I'm giving him shit because he's just streaming. He's not streaming, but he's just shooting off the cuff. I think the lizard adds to the Batman. I think it does.
Hold on. So, the big problems I have with this movie are structural and political. In a structural sense, I have to say that I was very confused.
It's too long. Because everybody says that, including me.
Confused by the approach they took towards the end of the movie when they were resolving everything, all the plot threads. Because it felt like they were going one way, and then they really, really didn't. All right? So, over the course...
Well, I'm kind of curious what way he thought they were going in.
First, the movie, attention is called to the fact that Bruce Wayne is a recluse who doesn't use his incredible fortune to help the city in any way, Even in the previous films, like the Dark Knight trilogy, I think they explicitly indicate that Bruce Wayne is using his money to, like, help the city out a little bit. But in this one, no. Bruce Wayne is a total recluse. And I actually like that a lot, because the whole point of Batman's character is that he's like this traumatized edgelord who uses his wealth to fund a personal war of vengeance, which is kind of like a motto in this film, vengeance, a personal war of vengeance against the criminal underbelly of the city, rather than make any real changes, right? Like, because we know, us woke lefties, right, that if you were super wealthy and your city was full of rotten decay, the best thing you could do was use your wealth to fund social infrastructure, to use your influence to back candidates who you trust and believe in, to call attention to meaningful problems and try to fix them, use power instead of your fists. But but I like the fact that he's ignorant of that. Batman shouldn't be like super introspective and self-aware. It's
not really that he's ignorant, he just didn't care. It's part of his development in this movie. He just doesn't care. He's kind of just wanting to go out there and beat up criminals.
Damaged. That's kind of the point of the character. That's, I think, when he's at his best, honestly. It's when he's a smart guy, right? He's very determined and dedicated. He's an inventor. He's inventive. He's a detective. But, like, emotionally, he's not all there. At least that's how I've always read him, and I like that. It's a character flaw that can be examined. And in this movie, it is present. In fact, they explicitly address it. At one point, midway through the film, an up-and-coming political candidate tells Bruce Wayne, like, hey, I notice you haven't donated any of your quadrillion dollars to the city. Could we maybe, if I win, can we like work on that? Can we use your wealth to improve the city, please? The convo doesn't continue from there, but I think they're setting up the pieces like, oh, Bruce Wayne is going to realize that being the Batman isn't how he helps Gotham, you know? Like, maybe he can do that for fun against like a supervillain now and again, but the real way to help would be using his wealth, you know? Like really getting back into the game as a public figure. And as time goes on, I feel like they're going to do that more and more. Towards the end, as we get closer and closer, like after the Riddler is caught, Batman seems really like disturbed by the Riddler's approach towards changing the city. The Riddler says, and this is almost verbatim what Batman said earlier in the film, all you need is fear and targeted violence to make a difference. This is explicitly what Batman does. That's explicitly, the opening 5 minutes of the film are him essentially saying this, but in more words. And Batman, rather than acknowledging, oh, the vigilantism that I am engaging in is not providing the positive outcomes I was looking for, he gets really mad and just shouts at the Riddler, and the Riddler just has a meltdown. They don't really acknowledge that, you know? But they're still building up the pieces, and I think, like, okay, so he doesn't acknowledge it here, but maybe it'll hit him in the face later. And it happens, okay? He's beaten up some, you know, some radicalized 4chaners, whatever, you know, who are going to do a mass shooting. It's, you know, it's very topical. And Batman's beating the shit out of this one kid, and they're like, stop, you got to stop. You're going to kill him, you know. And they pull back the kid's mask, and he looks like fine. He looks like he took a couple of good punches to the face, but like his face is intact enough for him to talk without even a lisp, really. So,
well, his face was fucked up. Like, yeah, he kind of ekes out a word. But yeah, his face was fucked.
You know, and, you know, they ask, who are you, kid? And the kid says, I'm vengeance, which is exactly what Batman said when he was asked who he was earlier in the film. And you can tell they're dropping it right there. Batman now realizes, oh, framing my opposition to Gotham's problems as a, you know, a vengeful hunt against those who have done wrong, this is a bad logical ploy. This is like a really bad framework from which to make change. They directly acknowledge this in the text. And then the weirdest thing happens. That is to say, nothing happens.
Did you miss the end of the movie? Because, like, throughout the movie, he's, like, so concerned with, like, catching criminals and less so with helping people. And kind of at the end, he's realizes he can't just be vengeance. He has to be a symbol. That's the whole thing where he takes he saves all the people by cutting the wire, and he falls down and he gets the flare and he guides them out. He becomes a symbol. That's the point. It's not that nothing happens. That was the point.
The end of the movie is Robert Pattinson doing this monologue about how maybe vengeance isn't what Gotham needs. Maybe I need...
Yeah, no, he guides people out, and then he does the monologue about maybe vengeance isn't what Gotham needs, because that was his character growth. You're doing the same thing Ben Shapiro did. Vaush, you're going to hate this. You're using Ben Shapiro level analysis on this movie. You're not going to like that, but it's true.
I need to help people. And he's doing this like National Guard assistance where they're like victims of a natural disaster being saved via helicopter. And he's like carrying people to the stretcher. And it looks, with respect, I mean, ridiculous, because you have all these like National Guardsmen, you know, it looks like it could be a scene out of a really self-serious disaster movie or like a documentary. And then there's, in broad daylight, Batman walking around doing one human's worth of good per second because he's just a guy, right? Like Batman's like in this instance, he's just being like a volunteer. And I get the value of a public figure volunteering, but I wasn't under the impression that Batman was like a beloved hero of the city, the way Spider-Man is in most of his films, you know, like
I guess maybe in the films. In the comic books, Spider-Man is not beloved. Spider-Man is hated in the comic books. Batman, pretty well accepted. I mean, the cops don't like him as a general rule, but that's about it.
He's only ever referred to as a vigilante, you know? I feel like in universe, if a Gotham citizen had looked at the TV and seen the newscasters go, Batman is helping people out at the city square, and look at here's this video of him taking someone to the stretcher, they would just be like, isn't that guy a criminal? Isn't that guy why is he doing that? You know, it was very strange. And he never uses, at least in this movie, as far as I heard, he never uses his personal wealth to help the city out, in spite of...
Well, I would assume that's the next step, but no, he never does, because until, like, the guy says the vengeance line, he doesn't realize he needs to do more than just beat up people, because it really feels like in this movie, he's not interested in helping anybody. He's really just interested in going out and beating the shit out of some criminals. That really seems like what his driving force is. He wants to get the Riddler. He wants to beat up some bad guys.
Being explicitly asked to by the political candidate who wins at the end and is meant to represent a change towards like hopeful optimism for the future of Gotham, I thought what they were setting up was like he would take off his cape and cowl, like it'd be the end of Batman. Towards the end of the film, he says something.
Oh yeah, no, it's year 2. He's not going to take off his cape and cowl. What? I don't even see how you saw them leading up to it. Did they ever mention him doing that? I don't recall them ever mentioning him doing that. They're going to foreshadow the ending. It's a film thing. You're going to get hints to the ending throughout, and there's no hint about him taking off the cape and cowl.
Something like maybe it's the end of the Batman. So maybe he's realizing like he needs to move past this. He needs to, hang up the cape and do real work as a billionaire. It's a funny sentence I didn't think I'd say here. But he doesn't. It's like they set this change up and it never actually happens. They put everything in place, and at the end he's still just Batman. He's just Batman.
Okay, so it took a while for him to get to it, and we got 18 minutes left on this video. We'll see how much he spins his wheels, because I don't know what else he has to say. But again, it's Ben Shapiro level analysis. You're missing it. I like Vaush. I want to make it clear, I like Vaush. Media critique is not his game. He occasionally jumps out with these videos, which I guess will give me fodder to look over and review and critique. But this is definitely not his game.
Except he's helping the National Guard carry people to stretchers in broad daylight. Not to say that's a bad thing to do. Just like, is that what you learned? Is that what Gotham needs? Just like one very heavily armored man in eyeshadow?
No, Gotham needs somebody to do more than just go around and beat up criminals and hunt criminals down. They need something more than that. That's what he realizes. Him just doing it by himself isn't all that impressive. The idea is that he's evolving, though. The reason why it's cool is not because it looks cool to the newscasters or anything like that, but because this is a change in the character. This is not the same character we saw at the beginning. This isn't even the same character we saw before the criminal who's all beaten up says vengeance.
Doing the work. I
do think it's interesting. I feel like I'm defending this movie. It's not a perfect movie at all. It's got its issues. Yeah.
Of like a regular volunteer. I don't know. So thematically, I feel like that was a bit of a slip up. I don't really know. I still enjoy the film. Please don't crucify me. I know people give me shit for my media takes, but I really wanted to put thought into this. And yeah. But now for the political stuff, okay? And you guys probably know where I'm going with this one. For the first 2/3 at least of the movie, the Riddler is almost explicitly the protagonist and moral good of the story, and Batman is in the wrong almost.
I think you're pushing it. I think in a lot of superhero movies, you could actually come up with a solid argument that the villain is frequently the protagonist based on the definition of protagonist, essentially being the character that drives the story forward. That's not uncommonly the villain in superhero movies, and the definition of protagonist gets kind of murky there because they're not a protagonist, they're an antagonist. Art and definitions can get murky. So Riddler is an antagonist, but yeah, he's one of those protagonist antagonists. He's pushing the story along, and Batman is essentially pursuing him. How Batman drives the story forward is just essentially being Batman and going after this Riddler guy. And of course, he gets the arc at the end. Riddler just gets caught. Yes. And as far as Riddler doing good, weeding out some corruption, I guess you could argue, but like murdering people, not so much. He's kind of a fucking psychopath.
Because initially, the Riddler's plan is to, in a very, media attention-grabbing fashion, expose corruption in Gotham by targeting, killing, and then exposing the secrets of city officials who were participants in a cover-up which essentially allowed a mob boss to run the city for 20 years. This is like the height of criminal corruption, and the conspiracy goes deep. They show it very clearly in the film. Okay, it's not just like one or two people, it's everyone. The DA, tons of people in the police force, political candidates, everyone is in on this. It's like a holistic criminal conspiracy. Now, Batman is a vigilante. Vigilantism, in general, in real life, is a really bad idea because due process is cool and good, actually. The times when vigilantism can be morally justified are, I'm generalizing here, but as follows. One, when you're doing something that only you can do, and also that needs to be done to prevent harm, right? So you could even take like what is it every guy fantasizes about in high school? Like if a school shooting happens and you do like a triple backflip off the roof into the skylight, and you knee them directly in the face and their gun leaves their hand, and you grab the gun and do like a twist and you shoot all the other school I'm sure you've thought about this. I haven't. I didn't when I was young. And, a form of vigilantism. Okay, fine, whatever. You stop a mass shooting. Okay, fine, sure, obvious, clear. But more interestingly, the cases where vigilantism can be justified is when there isn't really a functioning alternative. See, what we call vigilantism only exists in the context of a functioning court system, right? Like, it's not vigilantism if it's like Mad Max Road Warrior status, where there are no judges, there are no courts, there are no police, people just wander around, kill each other. Like, if you were in a tribal scenario, like beating someone else to death isn't vigilantism. Vigilantism exists in the context of and acceptance of a universal court system, at least with jurisdiction in the area that you're in, right? So the thing is, in Gotham, it's pretty much explicitly stated, at least in this film, that the entire political, legal, police, criminal justice system, everything is completely corrupt, like so corrupt. It goes up to the top and down to the bottom. It's incredibly corrupt. And in an environment like that, vigilantism is really easy to justify morally. I think that a lot of what the Riddler does is good. Not just him, honestly, him killing corrupt officials is is kind of minor compared to the greater good of drawing attention to their crimes, which, as the film progresses, does directly lead to greater civic awareness of these problems and like social antagonism and unrest, which...
Yeah, but he's killing people, and in my book, that's a bad thing. If you kill somebody, in my book, you're instantly in the wrong.
Is kind of the goal if you want to expose corruption in a city, right?
Short of self-defense or something like that.
He kills them, but like, he's basically killing like mob stooges who are like drug peddlers and murderers, and I just don't really care, I guess. not to say innocent people didn't.
I mean, I can get where he's at, because I love various seasons of the TV show Dexter, and that's about a serial killer who kills serial killers. So I see where he's at, but I mean, murder's still bad. If these people are corrupt, hopefully the system works, and I know the system doesn't work great. The system needs really revamped, but the system needs to, catch these people and put them in prison or something. It doesn't. That is an issue, but yeah.
Didn't get hurt. He drove a bomb in the middle of a funeral. It's all supervillain show business, but broadly, it seems, at least for the earlier and middle and even the early to late, like the first 4/5 of the film, the Riddler's just kind of the good guy, and Batman is trying to stop him, not because he opposes the corruption being unmasked, but because he has this archaic opposition to murder, which, look, I get it if it's Batman's principle, but look, there's one particular instance of this that really gets my goat, okay? The big mob boss guy, Catwoman is going to kill him for personal reasons. And Batman, of course, shows up and grabs the gun, and he's like, "Don't do this. You'll be as bad as him." And it's like, no, she won't. She's killing a mob boss who killed her friend and her mother, a person who's the head of a criminal conspiracy that's ruined this city, probably killed hundreds of thousands of people through the neglect, malnutrition, exposure, just from the pure extortion of city funds being taken away from social services. You won't become that by killing a person like that. What nonsense is this?
That's kind of the Batman logic, though. It doesn't, I would agree it doesn't hold up to water, but it's the Batman logic. I mean, there is a logic to not want to have your friend kill somebody and try to get that person arrested. I get that. But yeah, that's always been the logic to Batman. It's like a Batman line where, I think they even did a meme where the Batman line is, if I kill a murderer, there's still the same number of murderers in the world. And the joke Punisher response is, yeah, that's why you don't stop at one. And, yeah, but that's kind of Batman's thing, unless you're looking at Batfleck or Burton Batman. Batman avoids killing. And there is a logic to not want to have your friends kill, too. Again, he's going media critique, and this is just... that's the character.
It's like, can you imagine, like, every other film, like any other film, I get this is a superhero thing, but this whole film is gritty and edgy. You can only do gritty and edgy, but then have these moral lessons come out. It's like Inglourious Bastard, like, don't kill Hitler. You'll become as bad as him, I guess the person who did kill Hitler was as bad as Hitler, so maybe point taken. It's really dumb. If Batman himself doesn't want to kill, that's fine. If he wants to tell other people not to kill, that's also fine. But the narrative of the film condoning his message that killing a murderous mob boss makes you as bad as him is just stupid. It's really dumb, and it's borderline reactionary as well.
I get his point, but that's who Batman is. That's his argument, like, all the fucking time. All the time.
Very much like the liberal, phony pacifism, where systemic violence, which is institutionalized, is acceptable, but retaliatory or defensive violence against that system is unacceptable, Really, really dumb. And a lot of people die in this movie. Like, I don't really know how many exactly, but it's got at least a 4-digit count. I'll say that much. Maybe 5,
Yeah, it's mostly Riddler, too. The supposed hero you're claiming.
A lot of people. But anyway, the Riddler's coming off kind of like the good guy for the longest time in this movie. And then they do a Tyler Durden thing. They do the thing they did with Bane.
The Tyler Durden thing and Bane? What?
Back in The Dark Knight Rises. I hate this movie trope. I hate it. I hate it so much. When you have a villain who's got a really good point, and oftentimes the villain who has a really good point has a good point because they're drawing attention to social injustice. That's usually the good point they have. The writers then realize, oh God, we need to up the stakes, and I just realized this guy comes off way too sympathetic for us to be rooting for his downfall. We need to make him go over the edge. So then the Riddler, who has up until this point exclusively been targeting people associated with corruption, criminality, the looting and destruction of Gotham, he's like, okay, now I'm just going to blow up the seawalls around downtown so I drown thousands of people, and then I'm going to instruct my radicalized mass shooters to just gun down a bunch of people at a campaign victory speech of a lady who seems like she actually is kind of cool. What? Why? Like,
it's almost like he's insane. Listen, this isn't his worst media critique by a long shot. So I kind of get where he's going, or where he's at. I'm not 100% sure where he's going. A lot of this stuff is Batman tropes, and yeah, I'm not sure how you're comparing it to Bane, because Bane was very much a bad guy. Bane broke Batman's back, dude. Did you watch Dark Knight Rises? Anyways, I guess I'm saying he's not completely wrong here, but kind of a movie thing. Yeah. It's not a perfect movie.
Up until this point, I was under the impression the Riddler was angry, embittered, and yes, genuinely insane because the city had been essentially raped by corruption, and he wanted to lash out against the people who had done it. And
yes, and I do feel like that's kind of explained now. He brings that up because Riddler essentially says there's corruption everywhere, so the best way to handle it is to destroy the city, which is actually, especially if you're insane, a semi-logical conclusion considering all the corruption there is actually in this city. Like, it's all over. It's like Batman and Jim Gordon are not corrupt, and that's fucking it.
His methods weren't clean, and they weren't pretty, and they weren't morally, unimpeachable, but they worked. See, the thing that frustrates me especially is that after Batman talks Catwoman down from killing the mob boss, they arrest him, and then Riddler kills the mob boss. The guy dies anyway, just 5 minutes afterwards. It was, got killed by another guy. Okay, right?
It happens a lot in comic book movies. He's not wrong.
But the thing is, what was the plan if they had arrested the mob boss? They exclusively indicated in the movie, why did I say exclusively? They explicitly indicated in the movie that the city was corrupt down to its roots. The origin story of this big criminal conspiracy was literally like a rigged deal in a drug bust through the criminal justice system.
I do think it's interesting he's calling Riddler the Tyler Durden and then talk about how it's set up that the entire city is corrupt, and then questioning why Riddler would want to blow up the entire city.
How the fuck do you know you're going to get a good trial on the mob boss who you insist on arresting? This is what I mean about vigilantism being morally justifiable if there's no alternative. The criminal justice system, the court system in Gotham, explicitly in the text, is bananas. It is fucked. It is not gonna work. So what, you arrest the mob boss and then he just kills all the witnesses? It's not like that hasn't happened before. In the movie, that's a thing that happened before. He had people who had dirt on him killed. Like, why wouldn't he just do that again? Sometimes death is the thing that you need to do, This is one of the reasons why I respect Avatar: The Last Airbender, who realized they couldn't have their pacifist main character Aang end a 3-season, epic by murdering Ozai, even though Ozai, boy, especially for a kid's show, man, was there ever a villain who deserved to die, man? Ozai, you could morally justify that one. Oh boy, you could. It's very much an ontologically evil situation for that guy. But rather than simply
here's my lack of Avatar: The Last Airbender coming out. I've seen season 1.5.
arrest him, they recognize that no arrest of Ozai is going to be sufficient until the mechanism by which he achieved power is taken away. They can't take away his hereditary birthright. They can supersede it, of course, through Zuko becoming Fire Lord. What they can do instead is take away his firebending, which they do. And then he's just a regular guy, and not nearly as dangerous. The problem with the real world is we don't have bending and magical ways of taking away bending, and the power that a mob boss has continues to exist when they're arrested. There are plenty of real-world examples where you'll have figures in the mob arrested, and they'll just get out because, well, depending on the country and how strong the criminal justice system is, you can just kill people who oppose you and bribe officials. In America, it's much harder than it is in a country, say, like Mexico, which historically has had serious problems with the cartel. Historically, Japan has had major problems with the...
Okay, I think I'm starting to get where my issue is here with this critique, because he's putting lots of real-world ideas into a comic book movie, which you really shouldn't do. Yeah, there should be lots of similarities, but it is a comic book movie. I mean, it's not even that, it's a comic book movie. It's a movie in general. You can't assume 100% the same rules apply. It's one of those weird things where it's like, I get, but he's like way too overthinking what you need to... It's a movie.
The Yakuza, though they had a big crackdown on that a couple of decades ago, and since then things have been a lot better. I'm only saying that the idea that Catwoman killing the mob boss would have like tainted her is bad enough on its own, but the movie didn't even have the balls to let the mob boss live and show us the consequences of what him being allowed to live would have actually done, which would have been several dozen dead witnesses, maybe a couple of dead jurors and court officials, and then he gets off in a technicality. In the Gotham that movie sets up, that is exactly what would have happened. But then he just gets shot by the Riddler, so... Anyway, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked there. The point that I'm getting at with they pulled a Tyler Durden is that you have a main antagonist who has a really good point, and then he has to go psycho in order to justify the narrative.
He has to go psycho. He was psycho the whole time. That was the point.
Antagonism. You know, they have to justify his role as an antagonist. Bane is the worst example of this, and it's all like that I can immediately think of, and it's also a Batman movie, because Bane is literally Occupy Wall Street. Like, he goes out there, he robs Gotham Wall Street. They're like, there's no money here. This is a stock exchange. And Bane's like, oh, really? Then why are you people here? Which is a great line. I don't know if my mic even picked it up through my hand, and my voice was probably off, but great line, you know. Bane goes on this whole speech about how the wealthy of Gotham are raping and pillaging and looting the city, and yeah. And Batman's trying to stop him. Batman, no! And then Bane's like, all right, also I have a nuclear bomb, and I'm just going to nuke Gotham. And it's like...
Yeah, that doesn't pop up at the end. That pops up like... What, like, maybe, like, halfway through? That's not at the end. I don't know, Dark Knight Rises has lots of problems, though.
Why? Well, I know why. They did this in Bioshock Infinite, too, with, I forget the name of the Vox Populi, you know. In Bioshock Infinite, you know, Booker DeWitt, the main character, is running around basically like a white supremacist early 20th century America that's floating in the sky. It's a Bioshock thing, you know. And the Vox Populi are basically the underclass of the city, the very poor, and mostly people of color rising up. But then they become too woke, you see. They were fighting against essentially just an apartheid system, but they became too woke, and they had to have the main lady of it kill an innocent white boy, which then forced Elizabeth to kill her, and it's, oh, how tragic, you know. And I know they retcon this later in the DLC, and I don't care. Hasty.
Yeah, I know nothing about Bioshock except that it's a video game that exists.
Post hoc, compensation. They did what they did, okay? And what they did was employ a really common narrative trope, which is, what if the social justice go too far? I don't know, man. I don't get what they did with the Riddler. The first 4/5 of the movie.
I mean, was he expecting the Riddler to be the hero? He's not gonna be the hero. He's crazy. He is very much crazy throughout the movie. Eventually, he just fully breaks and he says, we're blowing up the fucking town. It doesn't seem like that far of a stretch for me. I mean, all the corruption he finds, it does not seem like that far of a stretch to say, fuck it, we're just gonna cleanse it.
I admit him trying to mail bomb Bruce Wayne was a bit much, because Bruce Wayne, he literally said, like, pay for the sins of the father. Like, that didn't make much sense either. The first 3 guys he killed were explicitly corrupt officials. And they're like, okay, now Bruce Wayne has to die because he's the son of a corrupt official. Which, no, but okay. And then, for his final act, he just decides to kill all of Gotham, basically, you know. Kill a ton of people with, you know, who have done nothing.
Almost like he's crazy.
Apart from just, like, live and exist. Yeah. His motivations would have been way more consistent. Batman should have hung up the cape at the end of the movie.
On the first movie, during year 2, he should hang up the cape? What foreshadowing did you see for him to hang up the cape throughout this movie? When did they set that up? Because I missed that. I mean, I'll be serious. I don't think they did any of that. But if they did do that, like, seriously, let me know. Because I can't think of any indication throughout that movie that he's going to hang up the cape.
You know, the Riddler should have remained consistent with his principles, which would have given him the ability to confront Batman on his values. Well, why shouldn't I be able to kill these people, huh? Well, what's wrong? They've killed plenty of people. They've ruined this city of millions. Why can't, what, some violence against them is so bad compared to what they've done? It was the only way of changing things. You, Batman, in the beginning of the movie, were fighting against random thugs on a subway. And the Riddler was exposing and killing powerful, corrupt officials. Batman, you were the person lacking vision here.
So he almost makes a good point here, but he's also following into a kind of a movie critique error that people frequently fall into. I fall into it occasionally. So he's not unique in this. In fact, the entire YouTube channel, Nando V Movies, is built on falling into this mistake. When you critique a movie, you don't critique the movie you want to see. You critique the movie you have. That's just how it works.
You were the person making the mistakes. You could have been going after the big high rollers. You could have been using your wealth, your influence, your intrigue, your social power, and your detective skills to find out what was really causing the poverty and the crime in the city. I
want to say every single time I've seen him do any media thing, which I'm going to admit not that often because I quickly stopped watching him doing his media stuff, he always does some sort of rewrite. And it's like, no. You're critiquing the movie. You don't get to rewrite it. You critique the movie you have. And actually, through most of this video, he was pretty good at that. Not a fantastic critique. I guess we'll see where it ends, but it just seems like now he's on to rewriting it, and it's not. We're talking about a movie that doesn't exist now.
Your vast wealth to address it and using your Batman skills to directly confront, arrest, and expose as a vigilante these people, but you weren't. You were beating up random dipshits on a subway. The Riddler stepped in and did his job, and you didn't like it because it was a little too bloody for you. But you know what? He still did it, and you couldn't. But no, the movie couldn't commit to that. So, you know, instead he has to go all Joker mode at the end. Literally, actually, because Joker shows up at the end. Also, don't you think having Batman hang up the cape at the end of this movie would mean that if they made a sequel, they would get to have a really, really cool, like, I have to come back moment? You know, like, they could even have that in the trailer, like.
But they were never foreshadowing that. I don't remember anything with them foreshadowing him hanging up the cape. It establishes that he's been doing this for 2 years. He has been doing it for that long. Where are you getting this idea he needs to hang up the cape?
like, because Joker's hyped up at the end of this one. I don't know if they'll do a sequel, but just in case if they don't do a sequel, then why not have them hang up the cape? Of course they're doing a sequel. Right? If they do a sequel, have it be like a year or two in the future.
Name the last comic book movie that was made that wasn't built with a sequel in mind.
He's using his Bruce Wayne persona to help out the city. Then the Gotham starts killing a lot of people, you know, and nobody can figure out, you know, and he's Bruce Wayne is like, all right, maybe if I invest more money in this community program, I can fix this problem. But you can't. Joker's a supervillain, man. Supervillains got to be taken down by superheroes. And he knows that, and he goes back into the action. Now, come on, that'd be a pretty good opening to a follow-up. Yeah, I'm just saying. I missed my calling. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed.
So, of his media critiques, that's probably, like, I haven't seen that many of his media critiques. That's probably why I think is the better of the one I've seen. So maybe he's getting better. But yeah, he still falls into lots of not good areas when he's critiquing media. It's not great. You don't rewrite the movie when you're critiquing it properly. He's saying, you know, in the real world it would be like this. Well, it's in the movie world. It's not in the real world. So I guess, I don't know. I guess my final analysis on this is it's overall better than the Ben Shapiro analysis, although he did make the same goddamn mistake Ben Shapiro made when analyzing this movie, which is kind of funny. That'd probably piss him off. I guess he's getting better. It's very meandery, which that's what kind of happens when you just shoot off the cuff and don't edit. The lizard part didn't add much. I guess he's technically getting better, but not a great critique still. But still, I do largely like his content. And seriously, people, if you're attacking Vaush, all I have to say is, don't do what JK Rowling wants you to do. Because that's clearly her goal. Don't do that. Just don't. If he does more misogyny, he'll do it later and it won't be JK guiding you to do it. But just jumping on him, that's the thing. He made that dumb joke, and literally the only reason people are jumping on it is because JK Rowling spread it. If she had ignored it, we wouldn't be hearing about it. So don't do what JK Rowling wants you to do. She's a monster. That's just my final thought.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.